Welcome to Understanding Our Role when Interacting with Students with Learning Disabilities. My name is Kim Snowball, and I look forward to working with you today during this session. Now, during our time together, there will be pauses, there will be activities where you're going to need to jot down your thoughts or a reaction to a statement or capture your thinking. So if you would pause for a second, if you do not have those materials with you, just a blank sheet of paper and a pencil, then we'll start. As we begin today, I want you to actually think about all the opportunities you have to interact with students. And we're going to just take it's less than a 2-minute video clip, and we're going to just listen to interactions through the eyes of a child.
Hey, Mr. Q.
Did you see that? Why would somebody do that?
Please go into the classroom, no talking, quietly.
Hey, Miss Merida, how you doing?
We need you inside.
How do you think that makes us feel?
I forgot my number.
What's your name?
Jordan.
What's your last name?
Carter.
All right. Go ahead.
School is hard enough.
Come on in, sit down quietly at your desks, and begin writing.
This kind of stuff just makes it harder. Every time we're ignored or yelled at or silenced, a teacher takes away what's possible.
No horseplay, no running, and especially no talking.
It doesn't have to be this way.
Hey, Jordan, how you doing?
Good.
Good.
Everyone we meet throughout our day can make a difference.
I've been waiting for you to arrive.
All the difference.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Great.
Hi, Jordan. Bye, Jason.
Good morning, Jordan.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Good.
Go ahead and put your number in.
Talk with us, not at us.
That's okay. I'll look it up for you. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Okay.
All right. Have a
Teach
good
us
day.
what we need to know.
Good morning.
That's how we get smarter. What can you do? Learn all that you can so that you can challenge us to be our best. Share yourself with us and show us how to share ourselves with others. Give us courage. Give us compassion. Help us find our own voices so we can become who we are meant to be.
After watching that video clip, I hope you take some time to just think about all the opportunities that come our way each and every day, whether we're dealing with students that come to us from elementary, middle, or high, or grandkids, or family members. We have opportunities to actually make a difference. But one of the things that I found out through my years working in the classroom is that some of the things we say it with the best intentions. We praise students, we praise our children, we praise our neighbors, we praise students in so many varied ways. But not all of them are actual ways that will build a growth mindset. And so what we want to do is we want to start our first activity with thinking about what do we say and how we say it, because the actual words, even with the best intentions, can create a different type of mindset. And today we have an opportunity to learn the difference. You're going to take some time just to read through A through D and think about, do I say these things to students? Do I say these quotes, per se, each and every day? Sometimes. And are they the best way that I can phrase? Because we don't know what we don't know. Meaning, I think that I'm saying something like, good work, you really must be smart. Might say something like, you behave so much better, and then compare them so that they have something, the students have some idea of the type of behavior. So I compare them to another student. And sometimes it's just very general praise. So on a sheet of paper, I just want you to write one quote that you often say when praising students. And then just set that aside. You can hit the pause button. Now, you have that set aside. You can flip it over or use a separate sheet of paper, but we're just going to do a little bit of a pre-assessment, true or false. And this will actually be very similar to what we're going to be asking you at the end when you take your final assessment. So think about this throughout the day. True or false? We should praise the student for the process and their effort rather than their intelligence or ability to build a growth mindset. You might not have the answer yet, so just what's your gut feeling? True or false? There is no place for sarcasm with students within the educational environment. Do we use sarcasm in our interactions with students? Let's reflect. True or false? Students with processing deficits need twice as much time to process a question you may ask them. And true or false, processing deficits may be misinterpreted as intentional inappropriate behavior. You need time to read over them and reflect, and just hit the pause button. So you're here today with us, and you interact with students differently than teachers. So I'd like you just to take some time to listen through this video and reflect as we think about your interactions each and every day.
In many school districts, the face that parents and guardians see most frequently doesn't belong to the principal, the teacher, or even other students. It's the school bus driver, the man or woman charged with the awesome responsibility of getting dozens of children from their homes to their classroom in a safe and efficient manner. To better understand their duties, Mental Floss asked several school bus drivers about their experiences on and off the road. Here's a glimpse of what goes on before, during, and after your kids hop on board.
Alright guys, so I just finished my junior high route. This year I don't have a high school route. So I have junior high and elementary. And today kindergarten boys start. So I have to remember, I'm looking it up right now. This is like, if y'all don't know, this is like my bus binder.
It's a serious and often thankless job.
People ask me all the time, what was it like to drive a school bus? And I explain it this way. Imagine yourself the only reasonable adult stranded on an island with 66 other people. Some of them juvenile offenders and the others scared of their shadow. That's what it was like every day for 10 years that I drove a bus. You see, I'm convinced that we can impact chaos if we will simply help others dream. Just like you and just like me. He had a name. For Danny, a baseball glove was enough. This kid walks up to me, a little older than a kid, and he looks at me and he said, "Did you used to drive a school bus?" This was about 6 months ago, and I looked at him and I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Is your name Will?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm Danny." And he told me his last name. He said, 30 years ago, you gave me a baseball glove on the bus, and I just wanted to tell you, it changed my life. We went in, did our respects, came out. I said, "Danny, can we meet later next week?" He said, "Yeah." So we met at an ice cream stop the next week, and I walk in, and Danny's already there, and I was going to buy his ice cream, and he finished his ice cream before I got there, and he had a shadow box on the table. You know what a shadow box is? It's what your mama or your grandmama put stuff in that really may not matter to anyone, and they hang it on the wall. He laid the shadow box down, took the back off of it, took the glove out, held the glove in his hand. I wanted to touch the glove. He began to tell me the story. On the bus when I was in the 5th grade, we talked about baseball. I'm not sure you even knew about baseball. but you seem to care about me. So when we talked about baseball, I'll never forget it. I said to you, I'm going to play baseball. You said, what position? I said, I'm going to play shortstop. And you said, no, you're not a shortstop. Play second base. He said, well, I played second base, and then I began to coach after I finished high school. And he said, I'll never forget the day you gave me the glove, Will. He said, I was getting off the bus, and I was standing at the bottom of the steps, and you had said, hey, Danny, wait. And it was the last day of school, and you looked at me, and you looked down, and you pulled an old glove out, this one, from a box beside your seat, and you tossed it to me in the stairwell. You said, hey, Danny, I believe in you. Do good. Danny said, for 14 years, I take this baseball glove to the field at every team I coach, and I'll say to my players, I believe in you. And I tell them the story of my bus driver giving me a baseball glove 30 years earlier, at that time, whatever year it was, and he said, I say to them, I believe in you, now let's play baseball. I'm convinced we can impact chaos if we help others know that they matter. I don't know where you are in your journey. Perhaps you're just beginning. Perhaps you've been doing this journey of chaos walking for about 30 years. Maybe you're on year 50, I don't know. But what I do know is impacting chaos involves human interaction. It's about caring for other people. It's about knowing somebody's name. Marlon, Teresa, Danny. I'm convinced that you and me, all of us together, can impact chaos if we'll step in and serve and empower others to dream and let them know they matter.
Each interaction with students is powerful. It has the potential to be powerful. As we go through today, the outcomes are that you will understand how to praise all students to build a growth mindset, and then how to interact with students with processing deficits to create positive outcomes for all. So you might ask yourself, well, what is a growth mindset? How can I build it if I don't know what it is? But let's listen.
So check this out. Carol Dweck and her colleagues wanted to look into the impacts that praise had on children's development. So what they did is they took over 400 fifth grade students from all across the nation, and they did a really simple yet interesting study. Here's how it went down. They gave all the kids a really easy nonverbal IQ test. There were 10 questions, and at the end of the test, they praised all the children in one of two ways. The first group was praised for their intelligence. So they said, wow, great job, you must be really smart at this. Now the second group was praised for their effort. So they said, wow, great job, you must have worked really hard at this. Now this is a really subtle difference, but the impact it had is incredible. So after praising the kids and getting them divided up into the two groups, they gave them all an option for their next test. The first option was, hey, this next test is going to be a little bit harder, but it's going to be a great opportunity to learn and grow. Now the second option was, this next test will be similar to the first and you will surely do well on it. Now the interesting thing is, out of the group that was praised for their intelligence, 67% of them chose the easier option, while 92% of the kids who were praised for their effort chose the harder test. This is unbelievable to think about, how just the subtle difference in the way that they were praised had such an impact. Carol Dweck explains why this happens.
The child or adult hears, oh, you think I'm brilliant and talented. That's why you admire me. That's why you value me. I better not do anything that will disprove this evaluation. As a result, they enter a fixed mindset, they play it safe in the future, and they limit the growth of their talents. Whereas focusing on the strategies they use, the way they're stretching themselves and taking on hard tasks, the intense practice they're doing, those are the kinds of things that say to a child or an older athlete, it's about the process of growth. As a result, they don't feel, oh, if I make a mistake, you won't think I'm talented. They think, oh, if I don't take on hard things and stick to them, I'm not going to grow.
Next, Dweck and her colleagues gave all the kids a really difficult test. It was one that they would surely fail, but they wanted to look at how the different kids attacked this challenge. Dweck noticed that the group that was praised for effort worked harder, longer, and actually enjoyed this test more than the group that was praised for their intelligence. This group got really frustrated with this test and had the tendency to give up early. After this artificially induced failure round, all of the kids were given a third and final test. Now this test was the same level of difficulty as the first one, but check out the results. The group that was praised for their intelligence actually did worse on this test than the first one. Their average score actually dropped by 20%, while the group that was praised for their effort did significantly better, raising their average score by nearly 30%. This is a 50% difference in performance that was caused by a few subtle differences in the way that they were praised. This study shows how praise can either make or break a child's development. I mean, we all do it. We all want to be positive with the children we work with, so teachers, coaches, parents are always looking for ways to support their kids and tend to praise them quite a bit. So we need to look at research like this and realize, okay, praise is a good thing and there's nothing wrong with being positive, but we need to be very careful about praising someone's intelligence or abilities and focus more on the process and the effort that they put forth. I think this is a pretty easy fix that will help us develop growth mindsets within the kids that we work with. And as all the research shows, having a growth mindset has a big time impact on the development of a child, whether it's on the court, in the classroom, or just in life.
Praise that builds a growth mindset. When I think about this, I'm bringing myself back up on the screen. When I think about this, I think about the different times in my own life when I've had the opportunity to actually say things that would build a growth mindset or create a fixed mindset. We want students that are actually working hard and, in the classroom, outside of the classroom, and that is the most important piece that I remember, as we feel like we interact with kids all the time, and this is good information for everyone, whether you're certified or classified, whether you're a grandparent, whether you're a coach. It is about just understanding that our words matter and how we phrase them actually makes a powerful impact on students as well as our own family members. So think back what that first true or false question was, and think about what's more important when you praise someone. If you want students to actually be building a great work ethic and work hard at something, it's not about the actual destination, but it's about the process and the effort that goes into it. That is especially true with students that have learning disabilities. And so as we interact with students on the bus, we don't know whether they do or not, so it's better to err on the side of caution and always be praising in a way that builds a growth mindset. So there are other pieces that go into this. So let's look at this little praise checklist that Dr. Archer from Explicit Instruction actually has created for us. So if you do this, then this is the result. So if you are, it's just, if you're doing this, then this is the end result. It's about the process. The second piece is be specific. Students know when you're just casually saying things that that are just out of habit. Like we said, good job, nice job, good work, but be more specific. If they were helping you clean up the bus, I really like how you, and then fill in the blank. The next piece is actually provide noteworthy performance. If a student is walking down the aisle, that's not noteworthy performance unless it's something that the students have been walking down the aisle of a bus or in the line of the cafeteria or coming up to enter the bus. if it's something that they've made a change and it's for the positive and you want to actually call attention to it, but if it's something that they do each and every day and it's not worthy of really calling attention to, then students also know when you're just faking it. The next one is actually focus on the effort, and we just talked about that, then a personal attribute. You must really be great at basketball because you are so tall. That's a personal attribute. And so we want to steer clear of those because they don't have any control of that. And if we're really trying to build a growth mindset, we're thinking with what are they putting some effort in. Comparing students to themselves versus others is a way to build growth mindset. They are not someone else. They will never be someone else. And so all they can control is what they do themselves. It's not what others do, but it's what they do. And so when you're thinking about comparison, just compare them to how well they behaved or the differences that have been made from their prior experience. And then make sure it's positive, credible, and genuine. Again, students can see through a lot of bluster. The last one is really more about when you're praising students, we want it to be unobtrusive. So if they're actually really working at something and concentrating, and I say this with the mindset of students that need time to process, we need to pause and just think about when is the appropriate time to actually give that praise. It might not be when they're in deep thought, but after the fact or as they begin the thinking process. So keeping in mind that there's a time and a place of how we praise all students. So building a growth mindset for students. The first one, we're going back to that sheet of paper that you actually pulled your thoughts down and wrote a quote, what you could hear yourself actually say. And so I'm just going to reflect on the 4 examples that I gave you. And so when we think about that great, nice job, that's not specific. So it's not going to be building a growth mindset. It's not going to hurt, but it's really not going to, targeting that growth mindset. B, when the example was you must really be sleepy to be this well behaved. Well, that's not providing a noteworthy performance. And I actually sometimes think how you say it might actually have a hint of sarcasm, and we're going to talk about that later on today. The next one, C, was you behaved so much better than, and as we just learned, we're trying not to ever compare students to other students. When you say good work, you must be really smart. Smart is not focusing on effort, but it's more about their intelligence. And we want to steer clear on that because, again, it's about the process and it's about the effort in which students are working. And that's what we want to make sure that we call attention to. So the next time you think about how you say something or what you're saying to students, think about the praise that I'm giving them. Will it actually create a positive growth mindset? And just take a few seconds actually to look at your own quotes, compare it to kind of the checklist we just talked about. Now, one of the activities I usually have students or participants do during this session is try to come up with some phrases that you can focus on. And maybe put them on a note card and put them in a place that's visible so that you are intentionally growing mindset instead of fixed mindset. Time to capture a little bit about what you just learned. Well, I want to praise you for the effort in which you are putting time and thought into reflecting on your current practices and the current interactions that you have with students. That if you take the time to actually create note cards to praise students in a way that will build a growth mindset, then you are valuing the opportunities each and every day that we have with students. The second part of today is really understanding students with learning disabilities, and the interactions that we have with them might be misinterpreted. We might not understand processing deficits. And so we're going to be taking snippets from a video that was from the 70s. And so there's some dating here that goes on when you're thinking about the language that is being used. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but it is from How Difficult Can This Be? And it's from a PBS Special Eagle Hill Outreach. And it's called the Fat City Workshop. And you'll understand what FAT stands for in a moment. There are 4 parts that we're going to break this video into, and what I'd like you to be thinking each time is about a reflection question. Now, one of the things that I need to actually talk about is the fact that this is an older video clip. It is so powerful. That's why we still use it even in today. We'll use it in many, many varied settings, but it's hard to hear. The good part of listening to language that is hard to hear is knowing that we, in fact, are better today. We are more respectful in the language we use. And so it wasn't out of disrespect, it just that in the video clips that you'll see, there will be language that sometimes seems offensive, and it is, because that's why we've changed the language. The other piece is actually the learning disabled child. We switched this around so that when we talk about students with learning disabilities, it's student language first. So the learning disabled child is a common phrase that is used throughout this video clip. And so I still tend to cringe when I hear it, but that's a good cringe, because that makes me aware that I am aware that it's the language we don't use any longer, and that we see the child first. A learning disability is a very small piece of it. It does make a difference in interactions, but the child is the most important piece, and the learning disability, again, is just one small facet of a child. The first section is Walk in My Shoes, and this is a simulation where you will hopefully be participating as if you were part of the group that is there. And I can say that the first time that I saw this, I remember thinking, oh, okay, this is really very dated, and I'm not sure if I'm ever going to use this, and it was recommended to me, and all of a sudden I found myself so engrossed in the simulation. It has been a very powerful piece in so many trainings, and so many times people or participants will say, why have we not seen this in the past? And I'm not sure, but here we are today, and so we're moving forward. As you watch this this first snippet, think about anxiety, think about tension, and how that will play a role in any interactions with students. So here we go.
One of the most common misconceptions about learning disabilities is that it's a school problem, when in actuality it affects every waking moment of the child's day. For that reason, we've called together a group of people today that view the child through very, very different eyes, and we walk for a mile in the shoes of the learning disabled child and see firsthand the frustration, anxiety, and tension that those children experience in school every day. The rules are very simple. First of all, this is not a role-playing activity, it's what's called simulation. Now, if you don't want to participate in this, if you would prefer to sit this out and you don't want to be called on, if you don't like being embarrassed in front of people and being asked to do things you can't do and being made to feel really uncomfortable, okay? That's tough. Because one of the things that you've got to gain as a parent or a teacher dealing with learning disabled people is this, the idea of problem ownership. He's not learning disabled just to complicate your lifestyle at home. He has no choice. So, we want everyone to participate. The first rule. The second rule is please no role playing. We don't want you to try to act like kids. The material will make it difficult for you to function. There is no need for you to try to make it worse than it really is, okay? And I am going to have the bias that many mainstream teachers have, which is that LD means lazy and dumb, and if you just push the kids and motivate them enough, they can learn. It's that they choose not to. Again, please, just follow along with me. Don't take anything personally. We'll have a good time doing this thing. Nobody's going to get hurt, but you will get a chance to see what it's like to be a learning disabled child. What color is the booklet, Carol?
Blue.
What's it say in the front of the booklet, Kit?
Alphabet City.
What's it stand for, Carolyn? What does it stand for, Carolyn?
I don't know.
What is it? It says at the bottom of the book. What's it stand for, Maria?
Frustration, anxiety, and tension.
Frustration, anxiety, and tension. What kind of animal's top of the page, Cara?
Bird.
Turn to the next page. What color's the first page, Jane?
Blue.
What does it say in the first page, Carol? The first page, Carol. Earth to Carol, come in, please. The first page. Earth to Carol, come in, please. Raise your hand if you thought that was funny. Yeah, everybody likes that except who? Except Carol. Anytime you as a teacher or a parent decide to use sarcasm with kids, understand that you created a victim. Now that little throwaway line that I threw at Carol, I will forget within 5 minutes, you will forget within 5 minutes, but it's very likely to stay with Carol for the rest of the day. Those little throwaway sarcasms we use. Jody, what color's the print in the first page?
Black.
What does it say, Lee?
Activity 1.
Was that what it says, Stephanie?
Yes.
Turn to the next page. What color's the next page, Lee?
Yellow.
What kind of animal's top of that page, Jody?
Tiger.
That's not a tiger. Carol, what kind of animal's top of that page?
It's a cat.
It's a cat. Famous story with a cat in it, Maria. Famous story with a cat in it. Famous story with a cat in it, Maria. Famous story with a cat in it. Give me one famous story with a cat in it, Maria. Okay, does anxiety affect performance? Does anxiety affect performance? Of course it does. According to this, Maria doesn't know one story with a cat in it. Give Maria a call tomorrow, she'll give you 30 of them. But in this situation, with the anxiety we've created already, with the anxiety that we've created in a short period of time, Maria's unable to get that information out. Famous story with the cat in it, Carolyn.
3 little kittens.
Famous story with the cat in it, Debbie.
Garfield.
Famous story with the cat in it, Cara.
Incredible Journey.
Famous story with the cat in it, Kelly. Melissa? Karen? Kim? Merritt? Okay, let's take a look at what's happened now. I accepted the answer, I don't know, from Kelly. What were the next 4 answers that I got in a row? I don't know. See, we have to really put this under a microscope and look at this. You people have been learning disabled now for 6 minutes, and many of you have quit. Not 6 years, not 16 years, the way the LD child lives, but 6 minutes. And many of you, once I began accepting the answer, I don't know, how many of you decided if he calls on me, I'm going to say I don't know? Raise your hands. Yeah. Many of you have decided if he's going to accept I don't know as an answer, I'm going to stop trying to think of a response and I'll just say I don't know. Okay, Jody, what kind of animal is that? Top of the page again?
Cat.
Down below, what kind of animal is that? Lee?
Duck.
Stephanie, what kind of noise did a duck make?
Quack.
Famous story of the duck in it, Nancy? Famous story of the duck in it, Karen? You were ready for me, weren't you, Nancy? Famous story of the duck in it, Karen? Famous story with the duck in it, come on. Famous story with the duck in it. One famous story with the duck in it, Karen.
I can't think
famous
of a
story with
story.
the duck in it. It doesn't take a lot of thought, Karen. Famous story with the duck in it. One famous story with the duck in it. Nancy knew one.
Yeah, well, Nancy's better than I am because I can't think of a
Debbie,
story
famous
with
story
a
with the duck in it. Famous story with
It's a cartoon.
Famous story with the duck in it, Car.
Make way for Duck.
Famous story with the duck in it, Kelly.
I was going to say Donald Duck.
Oh, she took my answer. Don't you love it? Melissa, famous story with the duck in it. Turn the page. Karen, what kind of animal is that? Top of the page. I'm sorry? A pig. What kind of noise did a pig make, Kim? Famous story with the pig in it, Merritt. Famous story with the pig in it, Merritt. Famous story with the pig in it, Paula. Down below, what kind of animal is that, Car?
Swan.
What kind of noise did it make, Debbie? Okay, see, what you've got to see sometimes is you've got to see Fat City from where I'm standing. Because I've got 15 people looking up at me, and I say, what kind of noise does a swan make? And everybody takes a sudden interest in their shoes. They look down and okay, they're both on there. In other words, what happens is, after 9 minutes of a learning disability, you people have already bought into one of the credos that controls the life of the LD child, which is this: if I can't see the teacher can't see me. And so what you do is you look away, because we all know that it is the human reaction to anxiety. The first human reaction to anxiety is to look away from the source of the anxiety. And yet, what's the first thing we say to kids when we yell at them? You look at me while I'm yelling at you. You look at me while I'm spoiling your life. There are so many things we do as parents and teachers that don't make any sense. How many people here insist that kids look at them when we yell at them? I do all the time. And it makes absolutely no sense, and it's contrary to everything we know about the human reaction to anxiety. Okay?
Well, after you watch that video clip, you might be experiencing some anxiety yourself. As stated in that clip, this does not live in the walls of just the school. This is actually extended to have learning disabilities or experienced high degrees of anxiety. It probably hurts your ears to hear of students. Someone referred to a learning disability as standing for lazy and dumb, that it's a choice. These are not choices, these are just facts. And so we want to make sure we focus on the positive. What can we do? And when he says earth to Carol, sarcasm is detrimental to children because it does create a victim. And so we need to be aware that we might not intend that in raising children and interacting with children. Another piece that I think that is important for us to understand is the peppering of questions and just creating the sense of urgency also creates tension. So I want you to think of your fingers as dendrites. Dendrites are actually the connectors that pass information along. And so we now know that PET scans, that if we watch dendrites and the information will be passing along in your brain, and it'll jump through. When we have tension and anxiety, what happens is actually these dendrites shrink back. And when they shrink back, it no longer allows the information to pass through. And so many people will refer to as testing anxiety, but it's not in the testing effects. It's any time when students are asked to retrieve information when they're under stress. So we want to make sure that we actually create an environment that the information can easily be passed through. And that's so powerful for all of us that interact with children. And finally, I want to call attention to that last point that toward the end is about looking away from the source of anxiety. That is a human reaction. And so we need to own that and understand that that's just the natural processing. So when we demand that students look directly at you, it's not out of disrespect that students are not looking at you. It is just the human reaction. So there was a lot of information within just this little simulation. The speed at which the information was being asked, that speed was intentionally put there so that you could, in fact, walk in the shoes. So take some time just to capture your reflection. I know there was a lot of information here, but just take some time to capture it and remind yourself to just have a different mindset. Thank you. This next section is about processing. We want you to focus on, do we give students enough time to actually respond when we present them with a question or a prompt? So take a few minutes to jot down some information as the video is going, and then at the end we'll actually come back and hit some key points.
Turn the page, stop the page, camera. What kind of animal is that?
Oh, a horse?
What kind of noise did it make, Debbie?
Nay.
Famous story with a horse in a car.
Black stallion.
Famous story with a horse in it, Kelly.
Black Beauty.
Melissa, famous story with a horse in
They
it.
did both.
They took both my answers. Karen, famous story with a horse in it. Kim, famous story with a horse in it. Come on.
Black Beauty.
Famous story with a horse in it. Mary.
Black Beauty.
What kind of animals down below, bottom of the page, Kelly?
A camel.
Okay, just keep the books right where they are. Let's talk for a second. What about the pace of the class? Too what? Too what? Too fast. Okay, now this is important to understand as a mainstream teacher particularly. Learning disabled kids have a difficult time processing the language. As a result of that, if I ask a group, a mainstream classroom, 4th grade class with some learning disabled children and some non-disabled children, and I say, would you please tell me who was the first president of the United States? The non-LD children are processing an answer. The learning disabled children have to process what? The question. So in effect, they have twice the processing load to do than the other students in the class. So even if the class is moving at a normal rate, to the LD child, it seems to be moving at this breakneck speed as we've been talking here. So you say, who was the first president of the United States? The non-LD kids are processing an answer. The LD kids have to process the question. They actually have to go, okay, let's see, who, it means it's going to be a person. Was means he's probably dead. First, the one at the beginning. President is probably the one in Washington of the United States. President of the United States, the one okay, who's the first president of the United States? Oh, I know that. And he raises his hand. Everybody else has gone to recess. Because he had twice the processing load to do. Lee is my non-LD child. Stephanie is my LD child. And I say, Lee, could you please tell us the name of the book we're reading today? And she says, Huckleberry Finn. And I say, Stephanie, could you please tell us who wrote that book? And she says what? Huckleberry Finn. How many times has that happened to you in the classroom? Why? Because what happens is Stephanie is so busy processing the first question that she misses the fact that Lee responded to it, misses the fact that I asked the second question, and responds to the last question that she processed. But of course, what happens in a typical classroom? What's the name of the book we're reading, Lee? Huckleberry Finn. Good. And Stephanie, who wrote it? And she says Huckleberry Finn. The whole class laughs, and we say, Stephanie, leave the room. You've disrupted my class for the last time. Now, that teacher would not punish Stephanie for being unable to read or unable to do math because she understands a learning disability. And yet the child will be punished for having a processing difficulty, and all of those problems are caused by the same thing, which is this inability to process language. The most common misconceptions about learning disabled children is this. He's very distractible. He has no attention span at all. Using the terms distractible and attention span interchangeably, when actually those are two completely different children. You see, the child with no attention span pays attention to nothing. The child who's distractible pays attention to everything. The learning disabled child is distractible. In other words, he can't focus anything out. So he might be sitting there listening to me talk, and he's interested in what I'm saying, but he's equally interested in my shoes, in my watch, in the fact that his shoes are too tight, in the picture of the Indian behind me. He can't focus anything out. Everything gets his attention. And the same thing happens with oral language. They can't focus that kind of thing out because of the processing deficit. Imagine going to school every day where things seem to be going as fast as we've been going now. No wonder they come up with those strange stomach aches before they go to school in the morning.
Well, again, you probably felt a little bit uncomfortable as the questions were coming in, but it might be now you're looking at it through a different lens because for the first time you're understanding why students might focus on a first question. The second question might have been missed. And so when we think about, how all of the participants were responding that the pace of the class was too fast. And do we at times ask them a question and then ask them a secondary question? And is it possible that they might be processing that first question when you actually give them the second question? Maybe you rephrased it to be more important, and you might misinterpret that they're answering the first question when you might have already then refined the second question. And so we want to just take a little bit of time and breathe, knowing that giving students enough time to respond and being aware of our own questioning or our own interactions is a step forward. So take a little bit of time and capture your reflections.
Okay, bottom of the page again, don't turn the page, bottom of the page, what kind of animal is that, Jody? Camel. Lee, if I want to see a camel, where can I go?
To a desert.
Where's a good desert? Stephanie, where's a big desert? What country?
The Sahara.
Quickly, another one. Nancy, what country? What country is the Sahara in, Nancy?
Africa.
Good guess. I want to see a camel, where can I go?
Egypt.
A famous story with a camel in it, Debbie. Todd, you know a famous story with a camel in it?
The Kipling's Just So story.
Kelly, famous story with a camel in it?
The Arabian Nights.
Melissa, famous story with a camel in it?
I don't know.
Okay, don't turn the page yet. Who wants to volunteer for the next one? Let's take a look. Not one volunteer. Why? There's two reasons why you won't volunteer in this particular exercise. Let me explain to you what they are. First of all, you've been learning disabled now for the last 10 minutes or so. Learning disabled people do not like surprises. They don't like dealing with something if they don't know what's coming up. You don't know what's coming up, so you're not going to volunteer. But that's not the real reason you're not volunteering. The real reason you're not volunteering is this. And think about this. What did I say to you when you got an answer right? What did I say? Nothing. No reinforcement, no recognition, no reward. I never told anyone it was a good answer. I never responded positively to one response that I got. What did I say when you couldn't get an answer, when you couldn't think of something or you made a mistake? What did I say then? Had plenty to say then, didn't I? You see, what you've learned in 10 minutes is what the learning disabled child has learned in his school history, and that is this. You're sitting there thinking, why should I play with this guy? Why should I play this game? Because based on what I've seen, if I get the answer right, he's not going to say anything. And if I get it wrong, he's going to embarrass me. So why should I volunteer? You see, what I've done is knocked all of the risk-taking out of you. When we deal with learning disabled adults, we find their most common problem is they won't take chances. Because all of the risk-taking was knocked out of them in their early years. Because you've learned that if you get the answer correct, I'm not going to give you any reinforcement. You're thinking, what's the best that can happen? The best that can happen here is that I get the answer correct and he won't say anything. But the worst that can happen is I get it wrong and he's going to embarrass me. So I'm just going to sit here. I'll respond if he calls on me, but there's no way I'm going to volunteer.
Risk-taking. Whew, that was a little hard to think back on and say, have I ever been part of the problem? Have I ever created an environment where I wasn't praising students for actually volunteering to respond and making a positive interaction with students? And so remember, all of this information is not within the walls of a school, but it's across every waking moment of a student's life. So every time we interact with students, we create either a positive interactions or we create a negative interaction where we knock the risk-taking out of students' lives. And so we want to make sure that we capture our thoughts and remember that we're rewarding a positive direction. We're not, we can't live back in the past, but all we can do now is take on this new information, reflect on it, and move forward in a positive way. So capture your thoughts. This next piece is about perceptions and interpretations, about how different perceptions can affect our interactions with students. And so there's two different types of mini activities that we're going to be asking you to participate with. Just be true. Just, relax, enjoy. I think you're going to have fun with it. I think you're going to be surprised. I know it took me by surprise, and it is one of my favorite activities. So enjoy. So I removed my face from the actual screen so that you can just concentrate on the picture in front of you. I want you to think about this picture. It is a single picture of something. And so what happens is in classrooms or in just in life, when we ask questions and we think that they should be able to clearly see or understand what's right in front of them, we as adults become very frustrated when they can't. And the part of that frustration is not having the tools ourselves to help them see. So I want you to study this picture. And then I want you to think about some unproductive interactions. Jot down on your piece of paper what you think this is a picture of. We'll come back and we'll explain it. Now, when you're thinking about unproductive interactions, reflect on things that you might have said. I've actually heard people say, think harder. There's been some bribery sometimes. Come on. If I gave you $1, would you actually, be able to answer this question? Sometimes it's about, threats of punishment. If you don't try to figure this out, then you will be, and then fill in the blank. And so those are very unproductive interactions. So what are some of the unproductive interactions that we have? So now that we look at this picture, we think we might have an idea what it is. But what if we're still struggling? What are some of the things that we can do to help a student or another individual see? So here's some guidelines. When interacting with students, we want to make sure that we have some step-by-step instructions. Maybe you look at this, then next look at this, and then finally look at that. I think of step-by-step introductions, videos are out there all on YouTube when you're asked to perform a specific skill. But this is something that, is just in our daily lives too. Just break it down into steps, and that will help bridge the gap of the struggle. Then we want to sometimes model. Well, if you did this, and then you actually showed them, that's a powerful piece. We don't want to underestimate using clear, concise, and consistent language, because that in itself is a barrier. And then asking students, what do you think I'm asking you to do? Or what is the information that I've given you? And have them paraphrase it back. And so what you might have thought you were clearly stating might in fact be totally not what was heard by the student. So we have to take some accountability on our own shoulders about maybe the misinterpretation or the perceptions that are. Here is some explicit instruction. Basically what I've done is I've outlined what this is a picture of. And you might think, okay, well, that outline is very obvious. But then I'm going to take away this outline, remove this scaffolding, and see if you can actually see it now. Okay, ready? Here's the big test. I've provided some explicit instruction. Can you see the cow now? And I remember the first time I did this with so many, participants, the ahas, the gasps. So I can't hear your gasp because this is, our online version, but you might have actually felt a little bit like, wow, I cannot unsee the cow. Well, I hope you enjoyed the activity we just had with the cow. Okay, here we are again. Now I want you just to look at this quickly, and then I'm going to move on, because what I'm going to ask you to do is just jot down what you thought you saw and what you would title if that you saw that work of art hanging in a museum or in someone's house. What would be a good name for that image you just saw? That's exactly what we're going to watch now, because here Rick Lavoie is actually back on the screen again. We're going to watch a video clip where he shows the participants the same thing, and then I want you to get a feel for what it would be like to be part of his group today. So here we go.
Do we think that visual perception problems can affect behavior? Do you think so? Okay, let's try this on for size. You're a mom or a dad. Your son in the 4th grade comes home and says, "Ma, they told me I can't take the school bus again until I'm voting age, but I didn't do anything wrong." What do we automatically assume? Automatically. Of course you did something wrong. You must have done something wrong. You don't get thrown off a school bus for doing nothing wrong. You must have done something wrong. Let's take a look at that. Because many times the learning disabled child, certainly not all the time, but many times the LD child will get into trouble and not know what he did wrong. And when he says, I don't know what I did wrong, he's being honest. And we're going to give that activity a shot right now. Here's what we're going to do. I brought in a picture today, and I'm going to show everybody this picture. And all I want everyone to do is to write a nice title for the picture. Here's your picture. All right? Everyone, a good title for that picture, please. Something I'm going to like. No talking, just come up with a good title for the picture. Maria, do you like your answer?
Yes.
Carol, do you like yours? Stephanie, do you like yours? Is it good enough for me to read in front of the class? Yes. Okay. Stephanie gave me an answer that she says is not only good, but it's good enough for me to read in front of the class, okay? Were you trying to be funny here, Stephanie? Excuse me, class. Do you think this is funny? Did you write this to be funny? Would you like to see how funny I think this is, Stephanie? Stephanie not only gave me an answer that was fresh, but then made it worse by telling me that it was good enough to read in front of the class. Well, you're not going to think it's very funny when you stay in for recess for a week, Stephanie, and when your mother comes in for a conference. And you know what she's going to say, class? You know what she's going to say? I got in trouble with Mr. Lavoie today, but I didn't do anything wrong. Because that's what she always says. You want to know what fresh answer Stephanie gave me and then embarrassed me by telling me it was good enough to read in front of the class? Death stalker. Death stalker. Here, I take the time. Now, take a look at it. I take the time to bring in a beautiful picture of a woman looking at herself in the mirror. Take a look at it. Okay. See it, Stephanie? You see it? The back of her head, she's seeing a reflection in the mirror. Okay? Many times, not all the time, but many times a learning disabled child will get in trouble and will literally not know what he or she did wrong. The coach will say, everybody get in the left-hand side of the gym. Our kid stands on the right-hand side of the gym, and the coach says, that's it, you can't play. The child says, but I didn't do anything wrong. Because to his perception, he didn't see what happened is you responded to what you perceived. You misperceived the stimulus. Based on Stephanie's perception of this stimulus, that was a very good answer. But see, I wear the suit. I'm the teacher. And I determine what the stimulus is. And this is not a picture of a skull. There's no skull in this picture. It's not a matter of debate. This is not a skull. It's a picture of a woman looking at herself in a mirror. It's a classic picture called vanity. So I was expecting answers like the big night out or getting ready for the prom or something like that. I certainly wasn't expecting something like Death Stalker. Okay? But again, what you did is you perceived, you reacted to the stimulus that you perceived, and then, if you could have seen the look on Stephanie's face, she was thinking, what is he so upset about? What did I do wrong?
So how many of you actually saw the woman looking in the mirror? I know I didn't. And I remember thinking the same thing when I saw this for the first time. Well, I would have written something skull or Death Stalker. Every time there is an interaction between two individuals, there is a possibility of misinterpretation. Knowing that, we then might de-escalate or step back and think, what can we do to prevent that? And think about the guidelines we set. You know, simply asking, what do you think is going on? What do you think happened here? Might just change the situation and de-escalate, reduce the tension, and then we can move forward. It's like the cow. When I look at it now, I can see the skull, but I also can now see the woman looking in the mirror. I see both perspectives. So take some time just to jot down your thoughts about your interactions again. And were there situations in the past that you would do differently now or handle differently now, so that when we move forward, we have this resonating in the back of our minds about pausing, thinking about our interactions. Maybe there's a misinterpretation that may help us move forward. Well, as we close our session today, we just want to go back and reflect on the two outcomes that we started this session with, reminding ourselves that there are ways that we can actually praise students that will build a growth mindset. And the other piece is that understanding the role that we play in interacting with students, especially if a student has a processing deficit, a learning disability. We need to just reflect on our interactions and are they positive, and have we created the best environment for them to feel safe, secure. We know that these tools we put to good use. Take care, be safe, and we look forward to all the important work that you do in the future.
A few days ago, my son said something that surprised me. And it has me thinking about all of the people in school who help kids feel known and appreciated. Often the first person they see is the bus driver who is going to brave the elements and 100 screaming kids to get each student there safely every day. Or the crossing guards who go out into the freezing cold and guarantee that your student shows up safely to school every single day.
There's one last thing that we need to do prior to ending this session. It is actually to fill out your post-assessment so that you can receive a certificate that can be turned in to your supervisors. There'll be instructions on how to do so. Blah, blah. Here we go. We're at the post-assessment. The most difficult part of this is actually going to be accessing it. So there are two different ways you can access it. You will either go online and go into where you type in the URL and then type in bit.ly/3E7EI capital KS. Hit enter and you should be there. We have a couple different questions that we need to gather information so that you have the certificate in your name. So the second question is actually your name. There will be a question on email. You'll need to send us a correct email so that we can send you your certificate. And then all we need is information on the district, your position that you actually hold within a district. There are 4 questions. 3 out of 4 responses correctly will earn your certificate. If you do not want to type in the bit.ly code and you know how to scan a QR code, you can use this QR scanner on your phone or your device and access the document directly. Within 48 hours, you should receive your certificate. If you do not receive it by then, please feel free to contact me. My name is Kimberly Snowball at NKCES. My email is listed at the bottom, and I will check into why you didn't get it and make sure we can get it out to you. Thank you for your time. After you complete successfully the 4-question assessment, please take time to go to this site as well. There's another bit.ly form as well as a QR code for you to access it. And all it is just some quick questions about the session you just completed. All feedback is welcome. That is how we grow so that we can serve and connect you with others. Thank you for all you do and be safe.